Welcome back everyone to MGN as we continue Halloween month and the trending topics of horror games. Before I list the latest top 5, I ask you all to hit that big red subscribe button below and make sure to hit that thumbs up. When starting a horror game, you're anticipating a lot of fear to come, but there have been some games in our time which really didn't meet expectations, or more likely, completely failed at them, being more humorous than horror. Here are my top 5 worst horror games. Not all horror games are intended to be scary, some can be fun, though for Deadly Premonition it didn't really meet either of these categories. The gameplay is insanely generic, feeling more like any other title in the endless horde of mediocrity. In addition to the gameplay, the music soundtrack is also really out of place. More often than not, the soundtrack is inappropriate to the situation and forces the game to be more quirky than scary. Surprisingly though, not everything is awful about this game, which has something that should be featured more often: an unreliable character. The sole savior grace of Deadly Premonition is that you don't know if Francis Morgan, the character you play, is crazy or not, as he frequently talks to an imaginary friend, gets paid for shaving, and looks for clues for his cases within the foam of his morning coffee. Too bad that isn't enough to make up for the oddball characters you meet along the way, bad graphics, and general blandness. The director's cut did provide a bit more content and enhancement to the camera and graphics, but nowhere near it to identify this game as a good horror game. That's just my opinion though.
Did you see that, Zach? Clear as a crisp spring morning. F.K. in the coffee.
Ju-on, The Grudge, had some potential. Even though the movie wasn't the most frightening, there was hope that having a character engulfed in an environment that's dark and menacing would make up for it. But that's not what happened. The lack of graphics and horrible mechanics just didn't add up with the game and provided an experience that was more humorous than frightening. While moving around the dark room and swinging your Wii remote around like a semi-intoxicated individual, the environment never really seeped in. There was also moments when you knew when the antagonist was about to attack or show up, as the game provided you cues for it. That's very horror of it. But there's nothing more annoying than having a character run around searching an old house, not able to do anything, and in the end, you die anyways. Seriously, there's no winning in this game, you die. You get reborn as another character, which will die again. It's a horrible loop.
I didn't know then, but that soldier and those hellish screams were the reason I was here.
Well, that man in there is the last man to see wana.
First-person shooters have had a huge boom since the original days of Doom, Duke Nukem, GoldenEye, and many, many more. Better graphics, better gameplay, and environments to really immerse you into the gameplay. But I can't say the same for Shell Shock 2, Blood Trails. In Shell Shock 2, you play as Nate Walker, a soldier in the Vietnam War whose importance is magnified due to his brother's entanglement in some crazy testing program known as White Knight, which results in a zombie-esque outbreak. Sounds decent so far, doesn't it? The story is merely the hunt for your brother, Cal, which plays out across 10 levels, each lasting between 10 to 20 minutes each. The game manages to add a creepy vibe in the environment, but you quickly learn just how monotonous and atrocious a game really is. Poor level design, very clunky and poor AI, and more importantly, lack of fun. The gameplay breaks down with the idea that you're in a glorified shooting gallery where you stand in one place taking out zombies who are just moving slowly towards you. Other than that, you walk through spring-timed events, springing from traps, shooting enemies as they appear in front of you, and that's about it. Many of the actions taken in the game require little to no thought. Just point and shoot. There are also points in the game that can just become tedious and frustrating, with most frustrating moments happening in the end. In my honest opinion, Shell Shock 2 comes very low on the bar of FPS games, and gives little to no reason to replay it. That is, unless you want the achievement from Xbox 360 for having replayed it, but then by all means go right ahead.
That soldier, the soldier who had escaped White Knight, the soldier strapped to the bed, was my brother.
Get to the hospital, go through the parking garage. The badges I gave you work anywhere, but I don't want to take any chances with your coming through the front lobby.
When we think horror, we think gigantic monsters coming to strip our skin off our faces, jump scares to force our heart to miss a beat, and even environments which makes every step nerve-wracking. But for Amy, the horror concept here is to escort an 8-year-old girl from point A to point B. How terrifying. Amy puts you in a role of Lana, a woman responsible for the well-being of a little mute girl named Amy. As you start the game out, Lana and Amy are traveling aboard a train when an explosion sends the train rolling, turning Lana's and Amy's lives upside down. From there on out, Amy's special gift unfolds before your very own eyes. Amy has the ability to heal you, hack computers, and crawl through vents. The game's plot between Amy and Lana could be the saving grace, but there's so much unknowing about the game that you literally have no idea what's happening with no explanation whatsoever. Seriously, 7 chapters in, you still have no clue what's going on. The only thing you know is that Lana can't be alone, otherwise she'll be possessed and killed, and somehow Amy stops that from happening by healing her when holding her hand. It doesn't sound too bad, but accompany that with potentially one of the worst moving mechanics out there and your fun goes right down the drain pretty quickly. Want to pick up an item? Well, you better be sure you're pixel perfect positioning for it. Want to hit an enemy? Let's hope the game's collision mechanics works at that time. Apart from abysmal gameplay, the checkpoint feature in the game is also something in unbelievable nature. The game requires so much trial and error that with that comes the vast list of deaths that you have to go through just so you understand what to do next. It wouldn't be bad, but equip that with horrible movement mechanics and you literally slapping yourself because you can't believe how much time you put into it.
Santa Claus, Kris Kringle, Father Christmas.
She's verbally challenged. She can't speak, but she's really looking forward to Christmas.
Don't they all at that age?
Shasta, please.
Druna Morbius Gravis has to be one of those video games that you take a second glance at just because you can't believe someone gave the green light to produce. Druna herself is a voluptuous protagonist who's based off of a pornographic space comic book character and graphic novel whose main intention is finding new life and pretty much getting down and dirty with them. Yep, that sounds about right. The game on paper could have done well, as you play Druna, who's in sort of a coma, and you must assess her memories to restore her into consciousness. You do this through the brain container, a device that lets you enter her mind, move around in her synapses, enter her memories, solve puzzles, and then move on to the next memory. But the game had so many horrible mechanics in it, with potentially one of the worst save mechanics ever thought of. Druna herself has 3 statistics that you must keep an eye on. Cognitive effort isn't measured on how much time you spent in her brain, cardiac activity rises in stressful and physical situations, and nervous tension increases when the other 2 increase. You can reset the first 2 by expense of the third. But when tensions get too high, you're cut off permanently. You can save the game or continue as a predetermined location after dying. But either of these actions causes a decrease in your mental well-being. After a certain number of saves or continues, or just spending too long trying to figure things out, you'll be unable to go on and the game ends. This, along with painfully clunky controls, laughable dialogue and acting, tight time limits, horrible plot, and much more, made this game the worst horror game out there in my opinion. Though, for the very few gamers out there, I believe they played this game for their other reasons, which I will not get into here.
Shasta!
That was my top 5 for the week. What are your top 5 worst horror games and what makes them so bad? Let me know in the comment section below. Remember guys, make sure to hit that like, look for that big red subscribe button and give it a press for little old me. I never like bashing games. Credit is due to those individuals who have spent hours developing something that they feel meets what they wanted to portray. I'll give them that. But there are those games in which it's hard to find something positive as there are so many negatives to take away from them. Horror is a genre that should completely immerse the player, and these games just fall short of achieving that objective.